Hi, I'm Allison Hall, and I'm here with Senator Eric Oemig of the 45th Legislative District. Senator, recently the Senate took early action to cut state spending. What were those actions?
We did some cuts, and we call it early action because it's the earliest we've ever, actually passed budget bills in a legislative session. And these are more cuts on top of the cuts that we did last year. And let me just explain how urgent the crisis is with the budget. When we said cut and we directed agencies to cut, we really meant it. And we did it personally as well. In the Senate, we cut staff, we laid folks off, we cut their pay, we forced them to take furloughs. And let me put this into a context. In the Senate, we're less than 1% of state government. And our 1% of staff endured 67, so 2/3, 67% of the furloughs that we directed statewide. So with these bills, what we're doing is we're just putting it onto the agencies and saying, when we said cut, we really meant cut. And it's hard because the people who have to weather these, they have families, they're excellent workers, they're state employees who do a great job. And, unfortunately, we're telling them, and you have to take a deeper pay cut, and you have to do some foreclosing. Now, we tried to do this smartly. We, in our proposed language, we said, in the first version, we said, look, everyone, all agencies, you have to close 1 day a month and bank that savings. But that doesn't give a lot of flexibility, and some of the agencies have calendar, they actually make more money on certain days of the month that we would have been forcing them to close. So we're offering them some flexibility so that they can manage their budgets and furlough the right people at the right time so they can maximize their operations and minimize their expenses. We did exempt some things like law enforcement and some of the institutions and services where they're, like hospitals, where they're serving customers 24 hours a day.
What else is the Senate doing to reduce state spending?
Well, so there's cuts that we talked about, and we're cutting, we're well past cutting administrative fat. We're cutting services to people. And now, in the kind of the next phase of things, we're starting to look at how do we close loopholes. If you think about the money that the government spends, when we give a tax preference, very often these are very targeted to just a handful of companies in a very niche market. And, quite frankly, we did these maybe to incubate some new economic development. We did this to save some jobs, but we're kicking people off of health care. We're denying people basic, fundamental services. We're talking about reducing access to higher education or, increasing class sizes. So in that calculation, one really has to, and I turn to one of my favorite references right here. It's a catalog of all the loopholes that we have. And just flipping through here, some of these loopholes are downright embarrassing. And, for instance, I'm sure cleaning fish, very important service. Do they need a tax exemption? So, we're going to take a really hard look. I've introduced a bill to close a loophole where we're basically subsidizing dirty coal to generate electricity in a climate where we're trying to reduce global climate change. And does that make a lot of sense? Is that the best return for our money?
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Actually, yeah, there's one more kind of example I want to give on just being smarter. We've got to do smarter in government. And we have tax loopholes that disadvantage Washington state companies and give preferences to out-of-state companies. We've got to close those loopholes too. And I want to touch on I-960 for a minute. Many people don't understand maybe that Initiative 960 was passed by the voters a number of years ago, 2 years ago, and it requires a 2/3 majority to do really any change to tax policy. It's a blunt instrument, and so we're going to have to open up the initiative and do some, improvements to it so that we can close loopholes on out-of-state businesses that disadvantage Washington State businesses, because it's the right thing to do for Washington State businesses and competitiveness, and B, it also pleasantly creates additional tax revenue to the state.
Are there any other ideas you're looking at to raise money or to save money for the state?
Really, everything's on the table. This year, if it has anything that spends money, looks like it spends money, gives money away, we're looking at it and trying to figure out what's the return on that investment.
Thank you. If you would like to share your thoughts with Senator Oemig, please use the contact on the bottom of the screen. We look forward to seeing you next week.